Peace and blessings. This is Misael Bey, aka Warlock Asylum. And today we're going to talk about why noble-duality introduced the 20th century Moors to Islamism instead of worshiping a Kemetic or Canaanite pantheon. This is a real interesting topic because a lot of times, Egypt is put to the forefront by the conscious community. And the only thing that seems to have attributed to its downfall by the conscious community is the Greeks. And such thinking is a farce. Egypt was a great civilization at one time, but most of its fall, similar to the Greeks and Romans that succeeded them, was due to the degradation of their society, and so what had happened was that these dudes got engrossed in black sexual magic. And the thing is, let me just adjust this camera, get it right. What, I get tired of seeing is people talk about this and never, like, you get one side of the story. You know what I'm saying? Give the people the full side of the story. I don't think a lot of people know the full side of the story with Egypt and the sexual acts. But I'm going to tell you one thing. If you don't get anything, let me get this camera straight, out of this video, there's one thing that you should get, and that is before you follow these ideas of like making a big thing of an ancient civilization, look into their sexual habits. Look into the sexual habits of the ancient world and see what's going on. Sex in the ancient world is nothing like sexuality today. These people were totally free. And if you want to talk about Egypt, I mean, they made the Romans look like Boy Scouts as far as sexuality was concerned. That's like eventually these ideas and customs and habits were passed on to the Greeks, which were passed on to the Romans, but they came out of Egypt. So Egypt also fathered a lot of different sexual acts. You know what I'm saying? And today we're going to go into it. There's a book I wrote called The Whoredom Sutra, the Holy Qu'ran of Thelema. And in the introduction, I want to get to you some facts about some of the things that was going on in Egypt. Some of this information was inspired by a video I saw Dr. Alim Bey talking, and he was kind of saying, like, I think he was visiting New York or whatever, and they were trying to get to the bottom of this museum, and they were thinking that they're going to see more, like melanated people in the artifacts, and that just wasn't. I don't think the people at the museum told them what was up, but the reason why they hide certain artifacts in museums is because they're sexually explicit. That's why they don't put them on the floor. All these mysteries. Oh man, we want to see what's going on. They're hiding. And then the uncle that comes home from prison, they lie about everything. Them type of exclamation points start coming out. So I want to get into this. I want to take a couple of portions from some of the things I wrote in the introduction. Here's, for example, no study of religion or its accompanying occult technology can be effectively applied if an initiate of these very same mysteries is ignorant of the historical religion of sex. Published in 1846, Sex and Sex Worship by Otto Augustus Whale reveals prevalence of spiritual eroticism in the ancient world in its citation of the British Encyclopedia. Now, this is what it says. This book written in 1846, it's quoting the British Encyclopedia. All paganism is at heart a worship of nature in some form or the other, and in all pagan religions, the deepest and most awe-inspiring attribute of nature was the power of reproduction. The mystery of birth and becoming was the deepest mystery of nature. It lay at the root of all thoughtful paganism. Now I'm going to continue. To ancient pagan thinkers, as well as in the modern men of science, the key to the hidden secret of the origin of preservation of the universe lay in the mystery of sex. So the ancients knew this. So they were trying to tap into the sexual current, and these deities that they had represented in the ancient world, they represented either death or sex. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to see a little bit more of that in this next section in this book written by Jonathan Margolis, who illustrates ancient Egyptian life in a book called "Oh, the Intimate History of the Orgasm." Very appropriate title to our discussion. And it says, but while following the example of their sexy gods, potent sexuality was a religious duty for pharaohs, civil servants, and ordinary citizens. Two are now believed to have aspired to live as sensual as their kings. Material from excavated middle and working class houses shows that regular ancient Egyptians covered their walls in explicit erotic paintings and spent lavishly on their appearance, clothes, makeup, jewelry, and perfume. It goes on to say it would be wrong, nonetheless, to represent ancient Egypt as some free love sexual utopia. It was not. It was in no literal sense a liberal society. Girls were regularly deflowered in arranged marriages at the age of 6. Men opted for anal intercourse and vaginal penetration from behind to avoid having to lay eyes on their wife. But a belief pertained that sex was a part of the human condition and as such inherently guilt-free. Cleopatra is said to have fellatiated 1,000 men, including 100 Roman noblemen, in one night. The Greeks referred to her as Meritane Gaper, the 10,000-mouth woman, and Chelone, the thick-lipped. Okay, so there's some pretty heavy stuff right there. I know Cleopatra is also, when you look into these ancient sexual customs that these people have, she's also regarded as the inventor of the vibrator because she had a box, and the box had bees put into it so it had a vibrating effect. So if you want to know who invented the first vibrator, Cleopatra gets the credit. But we could see that these dudes in ancient Egypt, they were marrying girls at you know 6 years old or whatever, trying to capture their virginity and all this crazy stuff. Okay. Um, and it was not only Egyptians, but it was also in just different ancient societies this stuff was going on. But I do know in Egypt it was very prominent because if you look into the writings of Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, the one who records the Egyptians as having thick lips and woolly hair and dark skin, he also says later in those same writings that the undertakers couldn't wait to have a young girl come into their possession so they could have her way with her. So they were also, the ancient Egyptians were also into necrophilia. Okay. Even some of the myths of Heru and Set, get into sodomy. You know what I'm saying? So these are some of the things that are going on in the ancient pantheonic world. Um, Another book um, uh, that was written, um, the title of it is The Domesticated Penis: How Womanhood Has Shaped Manhood by Loretta Cormier and Sharon R. Jones, illustrates the use of phallic-shaped objects in the ancient world. Now, before I get into this, some of the oldest, the Huffington Post in January 2015, the Huffington Post had an article about the discovery of a 28,000-year-old dildo. So, I'm telling y'all, if y'all look into sex, into the ancient world, and some of the stuff that was going on, I mean, man, monotheism, and I'm a shaman, you know what I'm saying? This was like a relief, for the people because their rights was off the hook. You know what I'm saying? The rights was off the hook. I mean, it was just crazy. And so if you don't know that, if someone's constantly presenting Egypt on a certain pattern, then you thinking, like, man, why this dude Noble Drew Ali, he ain't going to the pantheonic religions of the Canaanites and the ancient Egyptians? Why did he introduce the 20th century Moors to Islam? Because you start calling them deities, like a lot of deities like Bast, let's say for example. Some of these deities, a lot of them were composite deities. They were made of different deities and put into one. And a lot of them still had that generative. They were like reproduction gods. So, calling on them could bring those forces into your life. So anyway, to go back into this book, The Domesticated Penis, How Womanhood Has Shaped Manhood by Loretta A. Korma, it says, like the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks and Romans carried personal penis charms that the Romans called phasimas. The Romans borrowed much of Greek mythology and culture, appropriating phallic imagery and spreading it liberally around the social landscape of towns and cities such as Pompeii. Roman cities had phallic statues posted at the city gates for protection and worshiped small phallic statues in their homes. So they got these ideas from the ancient Egyptians who wasn't wearing ankhs, they were wearing penises around their neck. You know what I'm saying? Um, this is stuff that, people don't, really get to know about Egypt or Kemet, always, Egypt. Why would you want to go back to something like that? But to make a long story short, what these personal penis charms were called phasimus by the Romans, which later is where you get the word fascinating. Okay, so for those who don't know that, I want to go back and I want to show you just how universal it is, because a lot of times people like the Moors, like, oh man, we the Mayans and all of this kind of stuff. Okay, you want to be the Mayans? What were the Mayans doing sexually? Like I said, if you look into every culture, look into a sexual rites. Don't just look at the pretty stuff. Look at what they were doing, because first, I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of this information when you're dealing with phallic worship and stuff like that, it's not difficult to come by. You can look into a Google book search or whatever, um, but it's not as prevalent as it is. Just in the same reason why they keep the monuments underneath the museums. But let's look into Mesoamerica now, because a lot of more is like, this is Morocco, this is Africa's here and everything. So let's see what these dudes was doing down in Mesoamerica. It says in this book called, man, I can't even, People of the Third Sex by Amara das Wilhelm. Page 190 reports Aztec rituals often included homosexual acts as a way of communing with the gods, and Aztec cosmology described 4 ages, the previous of which was said to be marked by a prevalence of peace, artistry, and homosexual relations. The male warriors were famous for their brutal combat and regularly sodomized defeated soldiers as a celebration of their victory. So when the Aztecs won the war, they start hitting these dudes up, sodomizing them. Okay. Prostitution was also common in Aztec society, and handsome teenage boys were especially valued. Among Maya, homosexuality was associated with Chin, the dwarfish nature spirit. In Mayan narratives, Chin introduced homoeroticism to the nobles and allowed them to take handsome youths from lower class families to serve as partners for their sons. These early Mesoamerican same sex unions were a type of marriage among the Maya and recognized under tribal law. So this is what was going on in the ancient world, like the ancient world. You know what I'm saying? So the Maya, homosexuality in the Aztecs was very common. Now you got people, and see, this is, it took me a long time, and man, I hate to really go there like this, but I used to always wonder, like, man, why these dudes, in the media always talking about blacks and homosexuals, like, that's a sexual orientation. It's not like a people. However, when you look into the ancient world, man, all these things that were going on, it's like crazy for people who are involved in certain paths. And they were the majority at one time. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, see, a lot of times what people see as moral sexually here comes out of Islam. And more so Christianity, but Islam. Because there's a reason why I'm going to talk about that in a second. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not really big, crazy about using the word Islam and all that stuff. However, what modern black folk, let me say it like that, understanding of sexuality is like, nah, we ain't doing this. No, we ain't riding with this or whatever. It comes out of Islam. It doesn't come out of ancient Egypt because ancient Egypt was profane. Here's another example of what was going on in ancient Egypt. This was this was public masturbation. You had kings like Akhenaten and stuff, and they got pretty wives like Nefertiti, and they lead the whole army to engage in a public masturbation ritual. Okay, so um, you can find articles on it. Just look up Egyptian and public masturbation ceremonies, and I think it occurred during a certain time of the year. Yeah, during the feast of Neem, each year the pharaoh, alongside the public, would head to shores of the Nile and perform the holy rite. Upon getting to the shore, the pharaoh would remove his clothes and masturbate, ensuring that the semen fell into the Nile. Like, man, I mean, sexual energy has a lot of power, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know how spiritual some of these things we're talking about really are, for our time. You know what I mean? Like, in order for them to do what they were doing, they had a different mind. So, Noble Drew Ali, he didn't want, like, there's a passage in the Circle Seven. I don't have it in front of me, but it says not to stoop down into certain things. And basically, what they're talking about is not to dip into the underworld because it opens this whole vault of energies that are not good or bad. It's just that they are what they are. And so, it just gets really, really, really interesting. And basically, Juali didn't want to introduce people to something that can contaminate their spirit, or if they were to do it, let them learn the moral practices of Islam before getting into that. You know what I'm saying? Because he didn't want Moors getting fucked up the ass, Sarasut and Seti. That's why he taught Islamism, you know what I'm saying, to these people, and not giving them some Egyptian or Kemetic Pantheon, because these dudes, like, they were corrupt. And even, man, to go back into something that's like 6,000 years old, you gotta dissect what was the pure part of it, and it may not exist. It's like when you go on the coastal shores of West Africa, you have spiritual practices that are traditional, yet they're corrupt. They deal like a lot with animal sacrifice and stuff like that. And when you know the spirituals, animal sacrifice is more fed to animal spirit. You are what you eat. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, predatory energy. So these people, they're doing stuff and they're getting benefits and stuff like that. But look at the nations. This is a problem that we have, currently amongst the melanated people. Even Haiti, people like, oh man, they did the voodoo, they won the war. Okay, they won the battle, you know what I'm saying? And then France took them to court, and Haiti had to give France 75% of their earnings for the next 100 years, something like that. And so, how did that work? You know what I'm saying? How did that work? How did that, why was people think that's successful? Look at the whole story. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't successful. If you do something magically and then you wind up, you win a fight, but then you wind up having to give 75% of your earnings to France, what did you really win? You know what I'm saying? If you say stuff like that, people think, oh man, this dude. No, you trying to get to the root of what it is, not this stupid stuff or just, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So we want to get to the root of what it is. You know what I'm saying? And these people are introducing this stuff, and then you wonder why, there's religions that almost mimic the complete Egyptian culture, like European religions. There's some of them like Catholicism. That's almost identical to what was going on in Egypt, and yet these dudes is touching boys. Why? Because they're tampering energies that they don't really understand. You know what I'm saying? If you look into research and stuff, one of the first forms of orgasm of sacrifice was orgasm. That's what the first thing like people would sacrifice to deity was orgasm. And there's books about this. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to find, and there's also references to, let me see if I can get this right quick. Here it is. Um, as far as the museums are concerned, I did want to point this out so people just don't think I'm talking. It is not surprising, this is an excerpt from the introduction of the book I wrote. It's not surprising that many of today's occultists are unaware of the use of sexual energy in the magical and religious rites. Suppression of sexually explicit artifacts by museums and other institutions of learning is well documented. Issue 30 of Spin the Walls in Archaeology by Louis C. Raymond had this to say. Quote unquote, this is what Raymond says. It is possible that in some museums, artifacts with sexual motifs are hidden from the general public. And there's a couple of other references I have in the book on that, but this is what was going on. You know what I'm saying? And here's something else. You want to see how grotesque Egypt or Kemet got in its sexual rights? Man, this is crazy. The International Handbook of Animal Abuse and Cruelty, edited by Frank R. Escione, spelled Ascione for those who are taking notes and want to look this information. It states, in ancient Egypt, crocodile hunters supposedly even practiced sexual intercourse with female crocodiles before killing them. This is how gross it was getting in ancient Egypt, and this is what you're following. Now you understand like why people like, what's this dude's name? The one that wanted to see everybody's wife before they got married, Dr. York. Like, man, maybe try to hook up with Dr. York, one of his daughters or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Then see what he says. Maybe he's still like, I gotta see the woman before, whatever. But you see this dude build pyramids and then he start getting on into all sorts of sexual activity. African Bambaataa, another one, you know what I'm saying? And all these people, if you look at all these people, with this thing with Egypt and invoking these deities, something usually happens or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Depending on how they invoke them, you know what I'm saying? And they may lead to a person. And shamanism is very clear that when you invoke an energy, it's coming into your subconscious mind. Why is it coming to your subconscious mind? So it can draw it then once it's in the subconscious mind, some people call it crowning. You know what I'm saying? But anytime you call an energy, it's coming into your subconscious mind. So when you and that's how it manifests in the world. That's how you can see certain things in your experience because your subconscious mind creates 97% of your experience. So when you start calling something into your subconscious mind, some of those things stay there and they draw certain experiences to you, but they may also push certain things away as punishment. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be careful of what you call it. And this is one of the reasons why Obujuali didn't get into, the Kemetic Pantheon. He took the Islamic route, recognizing it as an ancient way. You know what I'm saying? But to go into the Kemetic route, man, you gotta dissect like stuff where it got corrupted at, and I don't know if he had that type of information at the time. You know what I'm saying? To be honest with you, that's another option to take. However, looking at his some of the things that were going on in Egypt, I mean, and I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even talking about the homosexual practices. I mean, it was just a whole bunch of stuff that was going on in ancient Egypt. And for someone, to be part of a conscious community and not, explain to their, you know, followers or whatever you want to call them, people who listen to you, what was going on in ancient Egypt, and then turn around and ask them all a question, why, da da da, whatever, then you shamming people. You study all this about Egypt and you never study the sexual perversions that was going on in Egypt, and then you want to press up on the Moors or some stuff. Man, get out of here with that, B. You know what I'm saying? That's just some sucker stuff. You know what I'm saying? Tell the people the full story. A lot of these people don't tell the full story. Maybe like in Dr. Ben's time, they just dealing with what they phantom with. A lot of these people initiated men into masonry. So when they look at Egypt, they're looking at it from a Masonic perspective. But you as an individual, research the sexual rights, because sexuality was huge in the ancient world. I mean, it was huge, huge, huge in the ancient world. And what they giving people now, it's just like a butterfly of what was really going on. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to pull the screen back up or whatever. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, and so Noble Ali, he wasn't trying to let people get, there's no prosperity getting involved in that. Then he mentions that, you know, the Moors came from the ancient Moabites, which I have information on. I go into another video. You know what I'm saying? That where you can see historically people talking about this even before the birth of Noble Ali. But even when you look at the Canaanites, you know what I'm saying? I'm a Mesopotamian shaman too, so I know what it is. You know what I'm saying? But I approach my work a certain way because I'm knowledgeable about both sides of the work. So, present to these people both sides of the work, man. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people in these communities, they just talking a whole bunch of fantasy island stuff. Present the real thing. You know what I'm saying? You talking this stuff, oh, why the Moors, whatever, because they don't get fucked in the ass. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Worshipping these gods and stuff like that or whatever, that was basically, sexual powers of procreation. You know what I'm saying? And there is a truth that there is something involved with that, which I'll talk about in a future video. However, not to digress, getting back to the Canaanites or whatever, these dudes, they would have these dungy idols, you know what I'm saying? And what they were like stone idols, and they were dungy because of all the semen that was spilt on them. Like some of it was like caking up for like months and years. You know what I'm saying? And you asking this dude why he introduced Islamism and not a pantheonic, pantheonic stuff, because it was corrupt. So what point do you start at when it's not corrupt? We know that, certain things was cool because, a lot of these countries, ancient worlds, they had strong laws. However, this religious rights, the rights was mixed in heavily with sexuality, and before that, it was death rights. You see what I'm saying? So with Egypt, yeah, they had the laws of Ma'at. Like America has a constitution. Look how much corruption is in the government. You know what I'm saying? And so when the Greeks came in, these dudes were already on the slide. Like a lot of people don't realize Egypt was the beginning of the fall. You know what I'm saying? For melanated people, that was the beginning. You know what I mean? If you understand the history correct. So I just want to say that because sometimes people ask that question, and you know me, like as a shaman, these things, so you look at like, man, these people, they were doing this, that. I mean, it gets to a point where I don't have the mind for some of them things. You know what I'm saying? That's going on back then. If you want to idolize it and stuff, That's crazy. And, so that's why he did what he did. And then for other Moorish groups, like seeing Bay's group and stuff, he was like, if you read the clocks, he talks about the I am. That's a whole doctrine. The I am doctrine. Just look it up. The I am doctrine. You know what I'm saying? So these people are trying to stay away from vice. And if you look in America, most of the melanated people in America who have, you know, who are actively pursuing the faith of Islam have accomplished so much more than people with these ideologies and all this other kind of stuff, all these tokens on their back and everything like that. It has definitely had a big influence in, African American culture, as some call it. And then the thing about it is, these dudes like, oh man, um, Islam came into Africa and, da da, whatever. Like there was slavery going on before, and that was influenced by some of the traditional religions because some of these energies entered into their minds and they start flipping out on their neighbors. You know what I'm saying? And they start taking them as slaves. So by the time these dudes came in, it wasn't like a system that was introduced. It was already going on. People try to say things one way so they can get, into a certain advantage. But it is what it is, man. Man is a man. And as long as sex is involved, man is going to be man. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? As long as sex is evolved, like you have some people who can evolve past certain things. But as long as sex is involved, it's going to be what it's going to be. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be them four emotions coming up. There's going to be jealousies coming up and all these different things because people haven't alchemated themselves. You know what I'm saying? And these dudes was on the continent warring against each other years before outside people started coming in. You know what I'm saying? But, the point back to Egypt, that's like the beginning of the degradation. You know what I'm saying? So Drew Ali wasn't trying to take it to that. Like it's like a child. Like you a full grown man and you want to go back to something. You want to go back to changing diapers, like getting your diapers changed. If you're a full grown man and you want to go back to wearing diapers, people have words for you. You know what I'm saying? So man as a race is maturing. You know what I'm saying? And certain things, you know what I mean, he's growing and maturing into his way. You know what I mean? And so as far as like, a lot of things did come out of Cometian religion. You know what I'm saying? However, the reason why I think a lot of these things were already cults. It wasn't like someone came, man, because that's hard to do. Like, oh man, we're gonna get some notes together and we're gonna take this from them, we're gonna take this from them, we're gonna take. That's not how that worked. These people were involved in something, and they may have had differences with the prominent cults. We saw that with um, Akhenaten. He started getting into what people call the preliminary of monotheism, and a lot of priests of Amun-Ra wasn't feeling it. You know what I'm saying? And so, what did the Amun-Ra people do during the time that Akhenaten was ruling? They still had their thing going, or they went underground. So a lot of times, these religions that came out of Egypt and stuff, they may have seen some of the things that were going on, like, nah, we ain't feeling this. And they just like went underground or just, left like, nah, man, we out of here, B. Man, you dudes is, like some people like, man, y'all made this a law or whatever. The Pharaoh's doing this and whatever. Nah, man, we ain't feeling all of that. So they just left it. But it wasn't a thing that, like, they just took, these things were part of a greater spiritual system, and pieces broke off, and a lot of it was disagreements and understanding nature, what I'm saying, or how to do certain things. So some people are like, nah man, we ain't touching no dead girl. What are you, sick or something? And they break off. What I'm saying? They start like, well, we got this out of Egypt and this, that, and the other. Well, we got this out of Mesopotamia. A lot of things also came out of Mesopotamia. What I'm saying? There's a conversation about what's oldest and stuff. A lot of things came out of Mesopotamia. You know what I'm saying? You could talk about Egypt. Egypt didn't have a concept of zero. Mesopotamia did. You know what I'm saying? If you don't believe me, look it up. You know what I mean? And so, a lot of things in the ancient world, they set the tone for what we living in, but some things had to be pushed back because it wasn't good. Now, y'all bugging out because, transgenders got bathrooms and, you know, gay marriage is legal. Guess what? This stuff was going on in Egypt. It was going on in the Mayan civilization that you revered. Talk about that. That was us. Oh man, that was you. You know what I'm saying? And so was that. So this is why, you know, Abu Ali took this route. And this is why a lot of other activists take that route. It's not always about, what is the ideological theory or the ideological argument behind a religious faith or a spiritual system. Like people are like, man, they got this from here. It's like you look at um, television or the computer. The United States steal the technology from somewhere? No, it spread through commercial enterprise. You know what I'm saying? Commercial enterprise is very old. And so people hear about something, hey, I want to get those things too. So the king is like, yo, man, you know, Greeks like, yo, man, let's check on the Egyptians because they got some serious stuff. We want to get the stuff too, the same way you want to get a computer. You know what I'm saying? Then you got a computer in the house and someone say, hey, man, you stole that from the Romanians. That's stupid. It's technology. It's for the whole human family. Some people may get the vibe to produce it, but it's not always like they stole it. It was just shared technology, how people share television. That's how the technology was at the time. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, this was what was going on. So it was the same thing with some of the sexual customs and stuff like that, man. Some of that stuff was, man, some of that stuff was off the hook. Now you sitting there saying like this, and this is why start here. You know what I'm saying? Start with today. You know what I'm saying? And recognize like, yo, but don't get all infatuated with it because there was a lot of vice going on back then. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And it was much more than a transgender bathroom. I mean, like you read about the Aztecs, man, they win a war against their enemies and then they sodomize them. You know what I'm saying? You complain, you saying that's us, but then you complain about transgender in the bathroom. You better look at what's really going on. You know what I'm saying? And what happens when people resurrect certain things. Because some of this, people like, oh man, the government, they're doing population control. But guess what? This is going on at the same time that a lot of people are going back to traditional, paganism and not knowing what they're doing. So that sets a vibe to bring them energies back. And the people who are doing it are the same ones complaining about this. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm a shaman, but I don't teach like an ancient. I teach something that's relative to today, that's here. You know what I'm saying? And there's certain things I learned over the years not to gauge in because you're going to reach them forces, man. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on in your life. You know what I'm saying? And you sit here and listen to these people, whatever. And just the same thing with the sovereign, circuitry. These dudes can lead you into the gutter, or you can lead yourself into the gutter not knowing what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But the true magic is ultimately in the mind. You know what I'm saying? And so that's how you're able to get through certain things in life. You know what I mean? But if you going around, feeding something and not knowing its full potential, you know what I'm saying? Then this is what's going on. This is the same thing with monotheistic religions, like, worshiping a God that needs sacrifice or human sacrifice. So 99% of all Christians of African descent have a tragedy in their family. You cannot take me to one church and show me 10 families in that single church that have a clean, unadulterated life. You know what I'm saying? They're going to have a tragedy because that God demands human sacrifice. And people think, oh, that's a symbol, something celebrate during Easter and it happened long ago. No, it's still demanding sacrifice, and the sacrifice is you. If you don't believe me, look at the Passions of Christ. Watch the movie, and you see who the symbology of Jesus is. You know what I'm saying? And this is what they're doing. That's part of the religion, to sacrifice indigenous people, right? So, you see who controls the court systems, and then you see the Romans bringing this dude in, like, nah, man, man, dude ain't even do anything or whatever. And you see, like, the Jews outside, like, nah, man, we want to get this dude killed. This is the lawyers. We want to get this dude killed or whatever, whatever. Next thing you know, he's sacrificing. That God is happy. And all these sacrifices have to happen with melanated people by the end of the year, by December 25th, to worship their God. So the altar is now life, the whole stage of life. You know what I'm saying? The entertainment world, what's on the TV, that's the altar. And so we're going to bring as many people can to get executed so we could appease this deity. That's what's going on in Christianity. That's what Christianity is about. You know what I'm saying? It's not about a one-time sacrifice. It's about sacrificing the Son of God. Who's the Son of God? You see what I'm saying? So, that's what that's about. And if you read the Bible, you can show this to a Jehovah's Witness. I think it's in Exodus. I forget. I think it's 34:14. I don't know the exact passage. But you can look it up in your own time. Just look up in the Google search. Just look up Bible, and it says, "My name is jealousy." That's what God said His name is. So on one side, He says, just, I don't even know. They didn't have no J sound in the Hebrew language back then. So people use the term Yahweh. But then you could tell the Hebrew Israelites, and I'm not getting on the Hebrew Israelites because I don't really listen to Black Sabbath. But I'm just saying that, like, He says, "My name is jealousy." Why would you worship jealousy? You see what I'm saying? And so, it is what it is. Same thing, Allah has like a very wrathful war thing. And so the dark side of Him is like these dudes is going to war, constantly going to war, so much so they warring on each other. And this is what happens when you invoke a deity and bring it into mind. However, it's not as extreme as, a deity where you got to sodomize people and all this other crazy stuff. So if you're wondering why the Moors use Islamism to get to Kemet, you know what I'm saying, for whatever it's worth at this point, because, this last couple of years, man, that was tough, man. Some of the stuff that was going on in there with these dudes. And so, people coming in like, man, all this stuff going on, either I could park a bed and get horny, or I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? And so that's just what it was. That's just what I got for y'all today. You know what I'm saying? This is me, Sile Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, wishing y'all good night. Wafube.